You wake before sunrise to the cold sound of freezing rain drumming against heavy leather. The damp chill has seeped through your thin wool blanket, deep into your aching bones. Your eyes slowly adjust to the dark interior of the cramped leather tent. The air is thick with the heavy smell of wet wool, stale sweat, and the faint scent of wood smoke. You try to move your legs, but your muscles are stiff and sore from yesterday's 20-mile march. Every single joint in your back protests as you slowly sit up on the straw. Next to you, Titus is already awake and sitting cross-legged in the gloom. He is silently running a gray whetstone down the sharp edge of his iron dagger, the scrape soft and rhythmic, in the corner of the tent. Young Marcus is shivering violently under his wet cloak. He is only 18 years old, far from his warm family home in the sunny hills of southern Umbria. Outside, the sharp metallic call of the brass Bicino horn cuts through the morning mist. Its cold sound echoes across the massive camp, signaling the start of another grueling day. You reach for your heavy wool tunic, which is still damp and stiff with dried sweat. You pull the rough garment over your head, the coarse fabric scratching roughly against your cold neck. Your hands are red and swollen from the freezing air as you struggle with your footwear. You lace the heavy leather straps of your Caligay sandals tightly around your bare ankles. You stand up and look down at your feet, where the thick leather soles are studded with dozens of sharp iron hobnails designed to grip the slippery, muddy earth. You place a reassuring hand on Marcus's trembling shoulder as he struggles to stand in the dark. He looks up at you with wide, frightened eyes, forcing a small, tight nod. You lift your heavy iron plate armor from the low wooden equipment chest in the corner. The cold metal plates ring softly as you drape the heavy bands over your shoulders. Titus steps behind you, his calloused hands quickly lacing the leather straps of your armor. He pulls the bindings tight, forcing a deep gasp of cold air from your lungs. You buckle your wide leather belt around your waist, feeling the reassuring weight of the brass plates. The decorative leather strips hang down to protect your groin, clinking with every small movement. You slide your short, double-edged gladius sword into its wooden scabbard on your right hip. Your hand rests naturally on the smooth bone handle, finding comfort in its familiar weight. On your left hip, you secure your iron Pugier dagger in its ornate metal sheath. You check its quick release, ensuring the weapon can be drawn in a single, fluid motion. You lift your heavy bronze helmet, its polished surface reflecting the dim, flickering light of the lamp. The red horsehair crest is damp and matted from the heavy northern mist. You push the cold metal helmet onto your head, adjusting the iron cheek guards over your ears. You tie the leather straps securely beneath your chin, narrowing your view to what lies ahead. You push open the heavy leather flap of the tent and step out into the camp. The freezing wind immediately bites at your exposed face, carrying the scent of damp pine needles. Row after row of brown leather tents stretch out through the thick, gray morning fog. Thousands of tired men are moving like silent ghosts through the muddy streets of the camp. The wet wood fires hiss and sputter in the cold air, casting long, flickering shadows. Men crowd around the weak flames, trying to warm their hands before the march begins. Centurion Lucius stands at the end of the row, his posture straight and completely unyielding. His gnarled wooden vine stick is tucked firmly under his arm, a symbol of his absolute authority. His eyes are sharp and cold as he watches your small tent group assemble in the mud. He does not speak a word, but his stern nod tells you that you are late. You walk over to the heavy baggage pile and lift your wooden carrying pole onto your shoulder. The wooden frame rests across your collarbones, carrying the heavy burden of your daily life. Hanging from the pole are your bronze cooking pot, a small iron kettle, and your leather water skin. A tight wool sack holds your precious rations of whole wheat for the week. You also shoulder your two heavy wooden defense stakes, each 4 feet long and sharpened. These heavy wooden posts will help protect you when the cold sun goes down. Finally, you lift your massive rectangular shield, its bright red paint protected by a leather cover. The heavy wood is reinforced with iron edges, weighing over 10 pounds on its own. The total weight of 80 pounds of gear presses relentlessly into your aching shoulders. You adjust the leather strap of your shield, trying to find a comfortable position that does not exist. The brass horns blow once more, their deep tones echoing off the surrounding forest. The sound is the final signal that the entire legion is ready to move out of camp. You fall into your place in the column, marching 6 men abreast in perfect lines. You look ahead at the Silver Eagle standard, held high by the brave Aquilifer in his wolfskin. The iron standard glints in the pale morning light, a symbol of Rome's eternal power. As long as the eagle flies, you know you are part of something greater than yourself. The heavy iron nails of your boots crunch rhythmically on the gravel path of the road. Thousands of boots hit the ground at the exact same moment, creating a low, rumbling thunder. The massive column moves out of the fortified camp gates and into the wild forest. The wooden gates creak shut behind you, leaving safety and warmth behind in the mist. Towering oak trees rise like dark giants on either side of the narrow dirt road. Their thick, heavy branches block out the sky, plunging the column into a gloomy green twilight. The air inside the ancient forest is thick with the smell of rotting leaves and mud. Mud quickly coats your heavy sandals, making each step a heavy struggle against the sucking earth. Your shoulders begin to burn under the steady, crushing weight of your heavy pack. You focus entirely on the back of the soldier in front of you, marching in a dull trance. Beside you, young Marcus stumbles on a slick, hidden tree root, his heavy shield clattering loudly. You quickly reach out and grab his arm, keeping him from falling into the deep mud. He whispers a quiet word of thanks, his pale face slick with cold sweat and dirt. You give him a small, grim smile, telling him to keep his eyes on the road. Hours pass as the endless green forest drags on, each mile looking identical to the last. Your throat is dry and scratchy, clogged with the fine dust raised by the column. You unhook your leather flask and take a small, measured sip of sour water. It tastes strongly of vinegar and old leather, but it cuts the dry dust in your throat. Suddenly, the sound of galloping hooves approaches from the front of the long line. 3 auxiliary scouts ride past, their horses lathered in white sweat and breathing heavily in the cold. The scouts stop near the legion's commander, gesturing frantically toward the dark ridges above. Their wild expressions tell you that danger is close, though you see nothing but trees yet. A sharp whistle sounds from the front, and the entire marching column halts instantly. You stand in the sudden silence, your hand moving instinctively toward the hilt of your sword. The silence of the northern forest is heavy, suffocating, and completely unnatural. No birds sing in these ancient mossy branches, and the wind has died down to a faint whisper. You listen closely, but the only sound is the drip of cold water from the leaves. Your eyes search the dense green undergrowth, looking for any sign of movement among the shadows. The command to resume the march is passed down the line in hushed whispers. The pace is faster now, the tired soldiers moving with a tense, quiet urgency through the dark trees. Late in the afternoon, the column finally halts in a wide, muddy clearing in the woods. The sun is sinking fast, casting long, bloody red shadows across the wet ground. There is no time to rest. The daily fortified camp must be built before night falls. You drop your heavy carrying pole and reach for your iron spade with tired hands. You drive your spade into the dark, stony earth, throwing the dirt behind you. Your muscles ache with deep fatigue, but you dig with a frantic, desperate energy to survive. Titus works beside you, his heavy shovel moving in a steady, unbroken rhythm. He has done this 1,000 times before, his face showing no emotion as he throws the dirt. You build the high dirt wall around the clearing, packing the earth tight with wooden mallets. You take your sharpened wooden stakes and drive them firmly into the top of the rampart. A defensive wall of pointed wood now encircles the entire legion, protecting you from the dark. You step back, wiping the sweat and dirt from your burning, muddy forehead. You help Titus pitch the heavy leather tent, securing the thick ropes to the ground. Inside, you collapse onto the damp straw, your hands raw and bleeding from the hard work. Marcus sits in the dark corner holding a heavy circular millstone between his knees. He slowly pours a handful of whole wheat into the center hole, his hands shaking with exhaustion. You take a turn of the hand mill, grinding the grain into coarse flour. The stone is heavy and your shoulders scream with pain as you turn the wooden handle repeatedly. You mix the ground flour with water and a pinch of salt in your bronze pot. You place the pot over a small smoky fire, watching the thick bubbles rise in the dark. You eat the thick, warm porridge from your wooden bowl, using a spoon of carved bone. The food is bland and heavy, but it fills the cold emptiness in your stomach. Titus reaches into his leather pouch and pulls out a small piece of salted pork. He tosses the greasy meat into the pot, and the smell of fat makes your mouth water. You share the warm meal in silence, the crackle of the wood fire the only sound. For a brief moment, the warmth of the food makes you forget the freezing forest outside. The leather flap of the tent is suddenly pushed aside, letting in a blast of cold air. Centurion Lucius stands in the opening, his face dark and serious in the firelight. He points his gnarled vine stick at you, Titus, and young Marcus. His voice is low as he tells you that you have been chosen for the middle watch tonight. Your heart sinks at the news, but you stand up and reach for your helmet. You push the cold bronze back onto your head, buckling the straps with numb, stiff fingers. You step out of the tent into the freezing, pitch-black night of the forest. The camp is silent now, the fires reduced to glowing red coals in the dark dirt. You walk to the edge of the dirt rampart, taking your place beside Titus. You look out into the dense forest, where the ancient trees seem to watch you back. The darkness is absolute, broken only by the cold, distant light of the stars. You wrap your thick wool cloak tightly around your shoulders, shivering in the freezing wind. You hold your heavy pilum javelin in your right hand, its long iron point cold. The weapon is balanced, designed to pierce through armor and shields with terrifying ease. Your hand rests on the hilt of your gladius, ready to draw at any second. Every shadow seems to shift, stretching like tall, silent giants between the dark pine trees. The sudden rustle of dry leaves in the darkness makes you freeze, your breath catch in. You peer into the black undergrowth, your heart hammering against your ribs like a drum. Beside you, young Marcus shifts his weight, his iron hobnails scraping loudly against a rock. Titus turns his head instantly, his eyes burning with anger as he glares at the boy. Suddenly, a strange, low whistle echoes through the dark trees just ahead of you. It is not the call of any bird you know. It is the signal of the tribesmen. Before you can speak, a heavy wooden spear flies out of the blackness like a shadow. It strikes Marcus in the shoulder with a sickening wet crunch of bone and iron. The young soldier gasps, his eyes wide with shock, and falls backward into the mud. His heavy shield clatters against the stones, the sound loud in the quiet night. You drop your javelin and rush to his side, kneeling in the cold, wet dirt. You pull him behind the wooden rampart as dark blood begins to soak through his tunic. Marcus's lips are trembling as he tries to speak, but only red foam emerges. He clutches your arm with desperate, fading strength, his eyes pleading with you for help. From the darkness of the trees, tall, shadowy figures begin to emerge, moving fast. They are wild men with long, braided hair and white paint smeared across their faces. Titus screams a warning as he hurls his heavy pilum into the rushing path. The iron point finds its mark, and a warrior collapses into the brush with a loud groan. Arrows begin to hiss through the cold air, thudding into the wooden stakes above you. You pull your shield over Marcus, trying to shield his body from the deadly rain. Marcus's grip on your arm suddenly goes slack, his hand falling into the mud. You look down at his face and see his eyes staring blankly at the cold stars. There's no time to wait, for the boy as 3 warriors leap over the rampart. Their long, heavy iron swords are raised high, their wild eyes fixed on you. You draw your gladius, the steel blade ringing loud and clear in the night. You raise your heavy shield, bracing your shoulder against the thick, cold wood. The first warrior crashes into your shield with the force of a charging bull. The impact sends a shockwave up your arm, rattling your teeth in your skull. He swings a heavy iron axe, the blade biting deep into the top of your shield. The wood splinters, but the tough leather cover holds, keeping the weapon from reaching you. You step forward, driving your shield into his chest to throw him off balance. As he stumbles, you thrust your short sword forward, low and straight, beneath his guard. The sharp tip of your gladius sinks deep into his stomach through rough leather. He gasps, his eyes wide with sudden shock, and collapses at your feet in the mud. Titus is beside you now, his sword moving in short, lethal arcs through the dark. He drives back another warrior, his voice roaring a curse in the old Latin tongue. More torches begin to flare up inside the camp as the alarm spreads like wildfire. The deep, urgent blare of the horn calls the rest of the legion to battle. The remaining tribesmen retreat back into the black forest, melting away like shadows in the night. They have tested your defenses, and they will soon return with many more. You stand panting in the mud, your sword dripping with dark, steaming blood in the cold. You look down at Marcus, his young life stolen by the silent ancient forest. The rest of your centuria arrives, their armor clinking as they form a defensive line. Their torches cast a flickering orange light over the grim scene of the attack. Centurion Lucius looks at Marcus's body, his face hard and expressionless in the dim light. He places a heavy hand on your shoulder, telling you there is no time to mourn. You help Titus carry Marcus's body to the center of the silent, waiting camp. You lay him gently on a bit of dry pine branches, his hands crossed over his chest. The remaining hours of the night pass in a tense, exhausting vigil along the wall. You do not sleep, your hand never leaving the cold hilt of your sharp sword. The sun rises slowly, a pale, watery disk struggling to pierce the thick, gray fog. The forest around the camp is quiet, but the air is heavy with silent menace. The command is given to dismantle the camp, but the mood is grim and silent. The soldiers move with a quiet speed, knowing the enemy is watching from the trees. You pet your deer, your shoulder aching from the impact of the barbarian's heavy shield. Your hands are stiff and raw, the skin split by the cold and hard work. The legion marches out of the clearing, forming a long, dense column of iron and wood. You look back once at the empty camp, where a small mound of dirt marks Marcus's grave. The road leads down into a wide, marshy valley, where the mist hangs thick and low. The ground beneath your feet becomes soft and spongy, water pooling around your heavy sandals. The mud is thick and black, sucking at your boots with every heavy, painful step. The marching column slows to a crawl as the horses and baggage wagons begin to sink. Suddenly, a deafening roar rises from the ridges on both sides of the narrow valley. The sound is like a wave of thunder, chilling your blood in your veins. Thousands of Germanic warriors appear on the high ground, their numbers blackening the dark ridges. They beat their swords against their shields, creating a terrifying rhythmic din. Their tall priests move among them, throwing their arms to the sky in wild prayers. The warriors raise their horns, their deep, haunting blasts echoing off the cold stone hills. The Roman trumpets sound the call to battle, their sharp brass tones cutting the air. The commands are shouted down the line, and the soldiers move with practiced precision. You step into the muddy water, forming a tight defensive line along the low ridge. You lock your shield with Titus on your left, creating a solid wall of wood. The enemy begins to run down the steep slopes, a chaotic shouting wave of bronze and iron. Their bare feet splash through the shallow water as they charge toward your line. The ground beneath you trembles as thousands of charging warriors rush closer and closer. You tighten your grip on your heavy pilum, your knuckles turning white with tension. Centurion Lucius stands just behind you, his voice calm and steady amidst the growing noise. He tells you to hold your breath and wait for his command to throw. When the charging horde is only 30 paces away, the centurion screams the order. You step forward, drawing back your arm, and hurl your heavy pilum with all your strength. A cloud of iron-tipped spears rises from the Roman line, blocking out the gray sky. The heavy weapons rain down upon the charging warriors with devastating, bone-shattering force. The long iron tips of the javelins pierce through wooden shields and soft leather armor. The soft iron bends upon impact, making the shields useless and heavy for the enemy. The warriors are forced to discard their heavy pinned shields, leaving themselves completely exposed. They continue their frantic charge, their faces twisted with wild, desperate rage. You draw your gladius from its scabbard, the sharp steel catching the dim sunlight. You lock your shield back into the wall, bracing your body for the coming impact. A second later, the barbarian wave crashes into your wooden shield wall like a storm. The massive force of the blow pushes you back, your sandals sliding in the deep mud. The air is filled with the deafening scream of iron clashing against hard bronze and wood. The smell of blood, wet hair, and sweat fills your nose, choking your throat. A tall warrior swings a massive iron sword down toward your exposed neck. You lift your shield just in time, the heavy blow splintering the top of the wood. You do not swing your sword. You thrust it forward through the small gaps in the shields. Your blade finds the soft flesh of his thigh, and he collapses with a cry. Another warrior immediately takes his place, his wild eyes fixed on your bronze helmet. He thrusts a spear toward your face, the iron tip grazing your cheek guard. You ignore the stinging pain and push forward with your shoulder, driving your shield hard. The heavy boss of your shield strikes his face, sending him reeling backward into the mud. You thrust your gladius forward again, the blade sinking into his chest with a heavy thud. You twist the steel and pull it free, ready for the next enemy. The battle is a chaotic, screaming nightmare of mud, blood, and cold, hard iron. The Roman line holds firm, a solid wall of discipline against a sea of wild fury. Beside you, Titus is fighting with a grim, tireless efficiency, his face covered in dark mud. His shield is splintered and cracked, but he stands his ground like a stone wall. A heavy iron spear pierces the gap between your shields, tearing through the flesh of your shoulder. A burning pain flares through your arm, but you refuse to drop your sword. You grit your teeth against the pain, pushing forward with all the strength left in you. You must hold the line. If one man falls, the entire wall will shatter. The mud is turned to a red mire as hundreds of men fall beneath the trampling feet. The screams of the wounded rise above the din of battle, pleading for mercy. Slowly, the frantic momentum of the enemy charge begins to falter against your wall. They cannot break the iron discipline of the legions, and their attacks grow desperate and wild. The sharp blare of the Roman cavalry trumpet sounds from the far right of the valley. A wave of auxiliary horsemen sweeps down from the ridge, their long swords raised high. They crash into the exposed flank of the Germanic tribesmen, trampling them into the deep mud. The enemy line breaks, the warriors turning and fleeing back toward the dark forest. You stand panting in the freezing water, your chest heaving as you watch them run. Your sword is dripping with dark blood, your arm trembling with absolute bone-deep exhaustion. The battlefield is suddenly quiet, save for the splashing of water and the groans of the dying. The gray rain begins to fall again, washing the red mud from your armor plates. You lean heavily on your dented shield, looking down at the terrible scene of the battle. Hundreds of bodies lie scattered across the marsh, silent and still under the gray sky. You walk slowly through the shallow water, searching the faces of the fallen for your comrades. You find Titus sitting on a wet rock, wrapping a bloody bandage around his thigh. He looks up at you and forces a pale, tired smile, his teeth white against his muddy face. You sit down beside him, the silence between you filled with a deep, wordless understanding. You have both survived the day, but the cost is written in the blood on the grass. You look back toward the ridge, where the eagles of Rome still fly high. The next morning, the great funeral pyres are built from the wet wood of the forest. The black smoke rises into the gray sky, carrying the souls of your fallen brothers. You toss a small bronze coin into the crackling flames, a silent prayer for their long journey. You watch the smoke drift away, knowing your own turn could come tomorrow. The brass horns blow the signal to pack up, and the endless march begins once more. You shoulder your heavy carrying pole, your bandaged shoulder burning with a dull, steady pain. Your heavy boots find the muddy road again, moving south toward the borders of the empire. The damp forests of Germania are left behind, but their dark memory remains forever. Months turn into long, exhausting years as you march across the vast borders of Rome's world. You guard the high stone walls of Britannia, watching the cold, misty northern hills. You stand watch under the blazing, relentless sun of the Syrian deserts, your skin turning dark. You march through the high, snowy passes of the Alps, the wind howling in your ears. Your hair turns gray at the temples, and your joints begin to stiffen with every winter. The heavy iron armor feels heavier now, a constant weight on your aging, tired shoulders. Finally, after 25 long years of service, the day of your honorable discharge arrives. You stand in the great courtyard of the fort, wearing your cleanest wool tunic. The commander stands before you, his face grave and respectful as he looks at your scars. He hands you a small, heavy bronze tablet, your official military diploma. The bronze is engraved with your name, proving your Roman citizenship and your long, faithful service. You trace the cold letters with your thumb, your heart filling with a quiet pride. He also hands you a small, heavy leather pouch containing your pension of 30,000 denarii. The silver coins jingle softly, the price of 25 years of blood and sweat. You were given a small deed to a plot of land in a sunny valley in Italia. It is a long way from the cold forests of Germania, a place of peace and warmth. You pack your few belongings and leave the fort, walking down the long stone road as a citizen. For the first time in your life, you do not march to the beat of a horn. You build a small stone house on your new land, surrounded by green olive trees. The soil is rich and warm, and the air smells of wild rosemary and sweet grapes. At night, you sit by the warm brick hearth, looking at your old bronze helmet on the mantel. The red horsehair crest is gone, and the metal is dented and scratched from battle. Your young grandchildren gather around your knees, their eyes wide with wonder as they look at you. They reach up to touch the deep white scar on your old shoulder. They ask you to tell them stories of the great eagle standards and the dark German forests. They want to hear of the brave soldiers who marched to the ends of the known earth. You smile softly and look into the dancing flames, remembering the faces of the men you knew. You do not tell them of the terror, the cold mud, or the dying screams. You tell them of Marcus, who died brave, and of Titus, who stood firm beside you. You tell them how a boy from a poor village helped forge the greatest empire the world has seen. Your grand empire will eventually crumble to dust, and the wild forests will reclaim the stone roads. But the story of your courage and your sacrifice will echo through the ages forever. You close your eyes and listen to the quiet wind outside, your heart finally at peace. You have survived the long, brutal march, and your name is carved into the eternal stone of Rome.